All right, welcome to episode 3 of Infinite Quality. We're podcasting now, I guess. Uh, I'm the Sunny Machine, and today I'm joined by the best Jared
I'm glad to be here for this one. Hello, guys.
and Wuta.
Hello, everybody.
How you guys doing?
I think we're both tired, yeah, after
We're both
the
a little
events of last
tired.
night.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys are. Well, today we're going to be talking about dealing with chat. We're going to have um, a little bit of a discussion about um, just as a streamer, what it's like to be reading chat, how you should deal with chat, um, that kind of thing. So the first thing is, oh, I lost the thing here. Professionals. The first thing that we usually talk about is just reading chat out loud in general. So, um, what do you guys have to say about chat, like dealing with chat as streamers, like reading it? Is there anything you guys do?
Well, I have a touch on this one a little bit. I try personally to read as many messages as I can
Yeah.
out loud. Hey, we got a
Hey,
freshie. We got a live one.
we're joined by
Welcome
Gone
in.
Fresh.
Gone fresh.
Beautiful.
Up.
So we're talking about chat here.
Just in time.
Yeah. So, for instance, last night, we did a pretty heavy event, which required a heavy amount of focus. So it was a really difficult situation to deal with as far as chat is concerned. But typically try to read every single message that I see in the chat out loud, letting that person know that you've acknowledged them, you see them, and that their message has not been lost in the void. So it's sometimes how if you don't respond to somebody, they'll let you know. Like sometimes they'll call you out and as a streamer and say, "Hey, you didn't read my message."
Yeah, I've had
Um,
that. I've had that happen.
it's hard.
Even I've
Sometimes
had
it's
that
hard.
happen when I read chat out loud. To
Yeah,
them.
yeah, and they like, did you read my message? Like, yes, I did.
Yeah, yeah. So you've
Hey,
had that
read
too.
my comments, stupid.
Yeah.
Wait, what? Oh, man, sorry.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I did read it, but then you have to read it again.
I did read it, but you were AFK getting a
Yeah,
sandwich.
yeah. Yeah, that's true. So that's hard because I think I've probably acted inappropriately when I've read chat out loud. Somebody didn't hear it. Maybe they were watching an ad. You don't know, like, or maybe they accidentally refreshed the page or they hit back. Whatever, the stream got muted. That kind of thing. Um, so we got. I've had times where I've definitely read chat out loud, and then somebody said I didn't read it, and then I think I probably got too offended.
Yeah, and that
Well,
can
it's a
be
whole different
difficult to
world
do.
streaming. It really is.
Yeah,
You're producing, you're playing the game, you're, you know, just trying to
I'd
be
just say
creative on the
don't take
next
it
level.
personally if somebody.
It's
Same thing for the viewer, right? You hope that they don't take it personally, like you were ignoring them, because you never want. I never want my viewers to feel like I'm ignoring them. I think that's kind of the point, right? Like a strength of reading chat out loud is that you it's engagement first of all. You're showing that you're reading what people are typing.
Yeah, I feel like Jared does a really good job at this.
And no, I want his tricks. Tell us your tricks.
Yeah, what are your tricks, Jared?
Yeah. Well,
I'm telling you.
Chat's one of those subjects that, like, depending on who's asking the question, you're gonna have to answer things like completely differently. Like, we're gonna have a lot of people who tune into this podcast, whether they're members of IQ or whether they're veterans, and they're all when you see the topic of chat, you're like, oh, I want to talk about this, and then we start talking, and people are gonna be like, oh, that's not the reason I came here. Like, I don't even have anybody chat, or you're gonna have people who, if we're addressing the empty chat conversation, you're gonna have people who excuse me, people who are like, okay, well, my chat's out of control, or I don't seem to be connecting to people, and so it's this insanely broad subject, and to break it down, I think is like the most important thing, because we could like share our tips and our tricks and like our experiences, and like we were saying in our like 30 seconds before the podcast, where we were like, we were like, man, this needs to be a discussion because chat is so different for everybody. Like, there's not rules that work for everybody. There's things that are helpful and things to know. One of the things in IQ that, like, when we started IQ, infinite quality, if you will, the we had this rule that we laid out, kind of a best practice. Best practice is a better. Yes, I have a child behind me. Best practice is probably a better description of it, because when we started, like, there were two situations for most of us in the group, right? There was my chat is dead, and then there was how do I get bigger engagement. And I guess, like, I can just really quickly address both of those, and then I'll kind of shut up, and we'll talk back and forth about it.
Yeah.
Like, my chat is dead. I was very, very fortunate and had about 2 weeks of that max. Like we got off to a really good start, and I think the reason I had 2 weeks of that is because of the best practice that we shared and implemented, which is the idea of chat in general. Like, you have chat, like, chat's scrolling, chat's not scrolling, whatever, but that's not what chat is about. Chat is about communication, and and it is not your viewer's responsibility to communicate to you. It's your responsibility to communicate to the viewer. And the tricky thing about Twitch is the view count is wrong. Like, it won't update until after that dude is gone, right?
Yeah.
Like he's going to show up, he's going to be watching you being silent in a room, and then by the time you see a viewer in there, you say, "Hey, I just want to thank you for coming in." Well, guess what? He's already like booked it.
Yeah.
So the trick with for those people who have an empty chat and a way to get chat rolling and moving is you need to communicate with. We talk about capital C chat is the way that that Feckless and I always talked about it. Is I'm communicating continually. I whether I'm saying chat or whether I'm not, I'm describing what I'm doing, and I'm asking vague questions and not expecting an answer. If I'm playing Darkest Dungeon, I'll be like, okay, so let's go ahead and look at these stats, and I'm talking in this communal sense. Like, I'm like, let's look at this guy's stat. Okay, so here's what I think, and if anybody's hanging out and you think differently, just let me know. I'm totally down to understand that, and then maybe somebody pipes up, and awesome, cool. I've initiated a conversation, and very often people for some reason expect the viewer to initiate, and that is so incredibly wrong. Like, that it doesn't work that way. They are not the person who's put themselves on camera. That, like, it's about you communicating continually, and I think that that's a key component to chat mastery, because even if your chat's busy, you still need to be doing that crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be constantly talking.
Talk
would
talk
you
to
say
your
that-
audience, I guess, is a
Yeah.
good way to say it. I've heard people give advice before. I've seen this online. They tell you to act like you have 100 viewers, and I don't know that's a weird psychological thing to try to do. Is like, I have trouble with that pretending idea, but I think it's better to create something that 100 people would watch. Think of it that way.
Yes.
Do something that you would like that a crowd would gather around. Be entertaining, or find a niche. That's another way to do it. But when you're dealing with chat, I think we all agree that this is an interactive medium. So if somebody spends time like typing things at you, you should read it out loud, probably.
Yeah, and I think that's the second topic on it is reading out loud. Like, if there's nothing to read out loud, you need to be making noise. But if there's something to read out loud, uh, we need to understand that there's a psychological component, and that's what Wooder was talking about moments before. Is people love to hear their own voice,
Notice me,
that's
Yeah, like
senpai.
Yeah.
Well, I've had I don't know. Chat is interesting. Okay, like, so let me talk about my experience, and you guys can maybe help in that
Sure.
area. So, like, I've had people come in that they're already following my stream, say, and I know them. I've talked to them before, and they'll come in and they'll say something like, "Hey, what's up? How's it going?" And then I'll respond. I'll talk to them for a while, and then they won't say anything for quite a while or at all for the rest of the stream. And I've never understood that. I was trying to always gets into my head where like, did I say something wrong? Like, why are they non-responsive after saying what's up? You know?
It's funny you say that because I am that guy.
Yeah.
But you say what's up and then you kind of switch off.
I say what's up, and then I put my phone down and I hang out with you guys. But and I think that's the something that's important to acknowledge about the chat interaction is there's so many different types of people. Like I hate chatting. I hate it when I'm on the other side. I absolutely despise it. But I want somebody to know I'm there.
Well,
And so
especially if you're on mobile, that's a whole different ball game.
yeah, but even at my
It's
computer,
hard.
like I'm not somebody who
So you have
communicates
different
to a
kind of
str-
chatters. So it's kind of like an
But that's okay.
expectations
I
thing.
mean,
Well, and that's the idea is like you have Sonny who's saying like, man, that messes with me. But it's like, you know what? Like there are so many different types of people, and
Yeah.
you don't know what that other person's like.
Right.
Especially like if you meet me in real life, you wouldn't think I'm that sort of a person.
So
But
don't let it get into your head, which is
yeah, it's
kind
like
of what were saying.
you do your part, which is to communicate with them, and if they shut up, you just keep communicating. Maybe not even at them,
Right.
because I'll tell you, if I was like very often to tell you the truth, I don't say things in chat. We'll have a lot of people who I lurk the hell out of,
Yeah.
and and I purposefully won't say anything because I know that then they'll talk to me what the size of the
Oh, you
stream
cut
is.
out for a second.
Like
You know
I
what?
don't. Oh,
It's
I
Discord.
like I don't like. Yeah. So what I was saying is I don't like being forced to communicate as a viewer, but I want you to know I'm there. And so
Sure. And
it's
there's probably a lot of people that are like this.
I feel like a lot
You could
more
get a
than we would
whole entire
recognize. Yeah.
community of just that kind of people if you had the right branding or marketing towards that demographic. So
And
yeah,
that's completely okay. You just have to realize that it's not their thing. It's your thing. And
right.
so like you take what you can get and you see how much you can get out of it. And if you don't get more, then that's totally fine. You haven't failed. Like we very often IQ guys will come to us, right? And they're like sometimes we'll get people who just freshly get affiliate and they're like ready to go,
Sure.
and they've had 3 viewers. It's like their mom and their brother and then their
Yeah,
cell phone,
yeah, yeah.
like and so they're like, I don't know, my chat's so empty, my chat's so dead. And then you have a situation where maybe Wooter pops in and says hello, and then they're chatting and they're chatting and they're chatting and it's great, but then it goes away, and like it's such a discouraging thing for these guys. And I think that one
Yeah.
of the key elements of understanding chat is Twitch is not a chat room. It's an entertainment platform with a chat function.
Definitely.
For the most
you are
part.
the entertainment. The chat can be part of the entertainment for a lot of people, but there's a large viewer base on Twitch who are, you guys all know, that are straight up lurkers. Like Jared was saying, they pop in, they maybe say hi, and they sit there silently and they watch your stream for 3 hours.
It's like the people who are watching the game
Lurking's
at the
great.
bar.
Exactly. Like they're at the bar by
Lurking's great.
themselves, or whatever. But there's also the
Yeah,
exact
lots
opposite,
of
the
different kinds of
person
people. Yeah.
who wants to just talk the entire time. And we actually didn't touch on that at all, as the person, the type of chatter who
Doesn't read
tries to
chat?
dominate or tries to dominate the
What about the
conversation.
streamer? Okay, so those are two things we should talk about. The streamer who doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But is the person taking over chat? Is it because no one else is chatting, or are they typing more
Sometimes
frequently?
I think sometimes those people will a dominant chatter will move in because there's a void.
Correct.
Or it,
And
or it
they
just
have
or
a
it appears
platform.
they do because just no one else is stepping up
Yeah,
to
you'll
fill.
have someone come in and they'll
It's
see a
definitely,
void and they'll fill it up.
But even as a chatter, I mean, I guess because I'm a streamer, I recognize when I'm kind of, I always recognize when it's just me, or if it's, I see the patterns when I keep chats open, like when I
Right.
go on for alert.
So like the next thing we're gonna discuss anyway goes right along with this, which is like, how do you talk to chat when it's dead?
So I actually have a pretty solid amount of experience with this. People might not recently people might not believe it, but like less than 6 months ago I had a dead chat. Hardcore. So what I was trying to do towards the end there, before I really kicked it in high gear on Twitch, and we did this whole IQ thing that really stepped me up to the next level, because honestly it did, and you guys all know that.
Yeah.
But before that, when I was making a lot of weird choices and I had a dead chat, I would do everything I could to not I don't like it personally when people call their chat room chat. I personally don't like to I don't say hey chat. I'm not a big fan of it. Some people are, that's fine. But talk to it in the general sense of, hey guys, or hey dudes, or hey everyone, you guys, y'all, whatever, general term you want to use to address, the whole chat room as one thing instead of dominating, one person, just picking out one person to talk to. You're not
Right.
singling out one person, you're including everybody. When you ask a question, you say, hey, should I go left or right? You don't want to just ask the one person that's chatting. You want to ask everybody, because then if there is 2 or 3 lurkers and they want to chime in, they can chime in.
And I think that's super important, the point you just brought up, because the easy out and the easy practice on that is to be like, yo, Jimbo 1928. Like,
that's probably
he's
someone's
the guy talking
username.
to
Wait,
you.
that's
Yeah. Yo, Jimbo,
If you're
you've been
listening,
chatting to me. What are you? What are you thinking about this? Where should I go? And it's so much more welcoming in a general sense, and more importantly, it is not alienating to Jimbo for you to be like, "What are you guys thinking? Which way should I go here?"
Yeah.
Like, and that's the important thing is it's such a small change, but holy crap, it there's no negative side to general terms when you're talking to chat. I mean, even if like 2 or 3 people are lurking, all of a sudden they're conversationally included, and that's enormous. And that's
Yeah.
how you actually like can potentially push those people over the edge who are borderline lurkers. We got a couple people in my chat who I look at the hours spent in chat. Holy crap, dude, they're there more than my mods, but they say maybe one thing a stream.
Yeah, I've
And
had
very
people like
often,
that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
very often it is just because instead of answering one of you guys, I take the question you said or the thing I'm going to ask one of our friends or one of the mods, and I just open it up, and then that guy says something, and all of a sudden he's connected, and that connection equals more viewed hours.
Yep, it's a good point. I think it's probably a good idea to treat chat like people are individuals for sure, but as well as you want to speak to the audience, your entire audience all at once, everyone. So you want to speak to the group and the individuals.
So what do I do if I have 3 people? You do it anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like that's
at
the
a certain
rule.
number,
Is,
it's hard to
is
call out an
you-
individual, though.
I think it's hard. I think people want
I
want
think at your point, Jerry, I think it's hard to call out an individual. I mean, you could, I guess. No, you could, I think. But if it was like, it was a couple hundreds, if it was, I'm not sure. I think at some point, I mean, it's still fine. I just think it becomes difficult.
You mean when it's just like the chat is so dead? Is that what you mean?
Or maybe it becomes easier if chat's too big because you just know who to go to, actually.
Well,
honestly, when chat becomes big, like because as of late, like I've hit points where like I can't read chat, man. Like
yeah.
we've had
You
nights
need
where
slow
it's just
mode maybe,
heated up
or
so yeah, like it's heated up, and I didn't anticipate like a huge raid from somebody, and it's a really talkative raid, and we already had something big going on, like
yeah.
and people bust in, and I can't keep up. And all of a sudden, quite honestly, I revert back to what I used to do for the couple weeks that I had 3 or 4 people not talking, because it allows me to enter back into entertainment mode and not get distracted by. I mean, getting distracted by lack of chat and getting distracted by chat, like they're kind of the same issue.
There's a certain point where it's not even a matter of keeping up. It's just a matter of so there's another point we didn't touch on really, which is the other point where people are talking to each other.
Sure.
You don't necessarily have to read those messages out loud. At least I sure as heck don't. Like if it's a bunch of people talking to each other, you don't need to read that as far as I'm concerned. Like you read it, you know they're talking to each other and you can follow the conversation. But as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't really need to be spoken out loud unless it's like contextual to the conversation of the stream. But if it's like 2 people just saying, "Hey, how was your day?" "Oh, it was nice."
Sure.
You don't necessarily have to read every bit of that. But that's
Sure.
a lot of what happens when you have a fast moving chat is a lot of it is just interpersonal conversations between people in your chat.
That's true. People saying what's
So-
up, how's it
So
going?
those yeah, that can be something you can maybe scan and move past, but a lot of it, I don't know, it does get difficult once you hit a certain point.
No, I agree.
to-
There's chat you
to-
should read, and there's chat that you should just let naturally go. And
Totally. And also, please don't get caught with the Ron Burgundy effect, because it's happened to me.
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
I've
yeah,
had-
bro,
yeah.
where
I think,
someone
I think
types
every
something
single one
bad.
of us is about
Well,
to talk about that, right?
Yeah,
Yup. You have
yeah.
the Ron Burgundy. If someone types something bad, you just instinctually read
That's
it and
the
then
chat
wow, you
danger
go, oh, you
section.
gotta be kidding
Yeah.
me.
Okay, so
Yeah.
here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go through to our next point because it makes sense, and then what I want to do is invert every one of these and talk about the negatives. So that'll be fine. We'll talk about the
Okay.
opposite side. So
I like it.
Yeah. So let's talk about executing this properly. So you have to talk to chat generally and to individuals. You got to read the chat out loud, but you also have to identify chat danger. Right?
Right. And as quickly as you possibly can, unless you have super mods.
Yeah. So let's go over like obvious things that are dangerous. Personal information, anything against TOS. And I think I know a lot of streamers get nervous, and some who don't get nervous enough about TOS. And I think the best thing, it just needs to be that if somebody's breaking TOS, point it out, give them the opportunity to apologize and stop, and don't encourage the continued activity, basically. And if it's something that's horrible, you ban it, obviously, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
there's
time
a
it
lot
out.
of things that I will just
Takes a
straight
lot
up
of
ban on site.
discernment
I
here.
mean, it
Yeah.
totally depends on you. Like personally, if I see any amount of racist anything, it's goodbye, instantly. I don't even think about it. I don't care how long you've been at my channel. Goodbye.
Hate
Like you can't. I
speech
just
gone.
yeah, that kind of hate speech stuff. Like,
anything blatantly like
Hateful.
against
Yeah.
illegal.
Hateful.
well, actually, the other night in Jared's channel, it happened. A guy came in and he started just spouting off a bunch of racial comments, and boom, he was instantly banned. He made
Yeah.
another account, came back, boom, instantly banned. Like that was the right way to handle that.
Right.
And
Also,
we
make
didn't
sure- I
talk
would
too
say-
much about it.
that I've read a lot of people having problems with this. Make sure you have email verification turned on for your chat, so that people have to have an actual verified email account in order to chat in your chat room. If you're starting to get this kind of people making multiple accounts, that will curb it a lot.
But
That's
and I'm
that's a good thing to know.
curious. No, I'm not against the instant ban, but would you say there's any chance for just a timeout and then a ban following that if repeatedly?
Depends on how.
I feel like that really depends,
depends,
on
yeah,
the
how
person. Like,
Yeah.
because here's the thought: is there a certain
Or the
degrees
word
of
choice,
trust
I
that people earn? Like if some dude comes in and his speech is flavored inappropriately, and we don't know him, well, guess what? We got no investment in that guy. He's not part of the community.
Sure.
And
We
even
want
if
you
I
to
did
be.
misunderstand,
Yeah.
even if I did misunderstand his comment, guess what? Unfortunately, he's getting banned, and if it upsets him, you know what? That's probably fine because he's not going to think about it in another 30 minutes.
Sure.
Like, the idea is like, and I think this is, while we're on this topic, something just to mention as a side note is I don't care if you have 10 followers, please don't be afraid to ban somebody. It's not
Yeah.
freaking worth it. Like, you see that like on Reddit all the time. People are like, well, what do I do? Do I ban this guy? And it's like, hell yes,
Yes,
ban that guy.
ban him.
Do not be like you can't risk that, because what that does is it sets you up in this position where you are okay with being abused later. So if your stream gets big, you don't know how to deal with that crap. And
It
so you
sets
got to
a
handle it
precedent.
you got to handle it from the start. But I mean, generally, let's say hypothetically, if Wuta came into my chat and said something and I read it and it came off as racist, well, guess what? I know he doesn't mean racist things because I've known him for a long enough time, and or somebody else who's been in my chat for months. Like, they don't have a history of that stuff.
Yeah.
My mod's gonna time them out and probably ask privately and be like, "Yo, did you mean that?" and don't do that again. And then they're gone if they do it again. But if somebody's brand new, they're not part of the community, and your chat will appreciate a quick ban.
Yeah.
Like, because your chat, your
They don't even know
community,
what
Well,
happened.
I'll tell
your
you.
community is invested in your culture. They are your culture,
Yeah.
and so they like to see the thing that they've worked hard on be protected. They appreciate that.
Yeah. So originally, anybody who didn't break TOS too hard that came into my channel when I very first started streaming, I had a personal goal to convert the trolls, and so I tried really hard to get the trolls to convert and be more on our side and follow TOS and all of that, but that never lasted and it never worked well. uh, like
Yeah.
It's still worth the
toxic
shot,
from
though,
the
because-
beginning,
People
you
gonna
know,
troll.
yeah.
Because sometimes they're intelligent people that are just off by a little bit, and they come with the wrong approach.
Well, some
and,
people
and
just
they
don't want to
have the
follow
correct-
rules. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah, there's
I've actually
yeah.
got, I guess, a little bit of direct context for this exact situation we were talking about. Was I had gotten raided by somebody, and one of their viewers started saying some real edgy stuff in my chat. And I don't know this person, but he's part of my buddy's community. So I'm like, okay, we'll give him a shot. We timed him out for 10 minutes, right? Timed him out for 10 minutes, and I had a conversation. I directly addressed it on stream. I said, hey, not cool. Don't do that again. And 10 minutes later, he came back and said, hey, you know what? I respect that. I went too far. And he never said anything bad again.
Yeah.
And we turned him into a regular, and that was cool.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always happen.
And the
But
context pushed for that too.
yes,
though.
exactly.
Because,
That's the
because of
reason-
his connection to somebody else. If it had been
Yes.
some random dude who came in and said
Would
that,
have banned
you
him.
had the same response.
No, I would have
Yeah,
banned
yeah,
him.
yeah.
If it was a random person, I would have banned him. But since it was a referral, basically, we gave him the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
But it was a mod decision. I didn't make the decision. So again, that's another thing of trusting your mods.
Sure.
With chat, that's we didn't even really touch on that. That could be a whole nother podcast. Moderation.
Yeah,
is
we
on, yeah.
we
Because
should
Hey,
save
hey,
the
there we
could
go.
be about automating
In the
it,
future.
people. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff there for sure. Okay,
All
so
this beautiful content.
let's invert the conversation now, okay? So let's talk about not reading chat, being silent on your stream.
Well, that can't last too long unless you have a real strong talent.
Well,
or
I
a
mean,
real-
this is why people tell you to watch your own stream, right? Like go watch it. And if it's not entertaining you,
you have to be entertainingly impressive by a few standards to ignore chat and
there's
not
just
interact.
so
with your
many
viewers.
streamers right now, right?
There's tens of thousands,
it's
hundreds
just-
of thousands.
so much competition, and so just turning your stream on and sitting there and not reading your chat out loud ever, like ignoring your chat. Yeah, that's
Sometimes they have numbers. Sometimes they do have numbers, and
Well, sometimes you don't have the time to read your chat. I mean, even me personally, I don't have. There are times where you can't, and you are silent for a period of time if you're really concentrating.
Yeah.
But it's really hard. I can't think of any reason to ignore your chat. Isn't that kind of what we're here for?
well,
mean,
what
as-
happens when you do? I mean, I guess it's a good way to point out.
Right. So when you ignore your chat, I'll point out the instant psychological thing that I mentioned it in another one of our podcasts, I think, but the time you have to hook somebody is very small. So if you ignore your chat, if one person comes in and says, "Hey, how you doing?" right, and you don't see that, let's say you ignore it for 45 seconds. Okay, you're in the middle of a raid in World of Warcraft, and you have to kill this boss, and it's really important. So you can't pay super close attention. You can't read the chat. You ignore him for 45 seconds. He already clicked to somebody else's stream. You respond 45 seconds later. He's already gone.
yeah,
You lost that guy.
but that's fair though, because if they can't understand that you're in the middle of a raid and you are
but
you're doing your
that's
thing.
Twitch. That's
I,
live.
I've also had the opposite, which is pretty cool. Where I think I was on a boss in Dark Souls 3, and I beat the boss, and I responded to a late message, and they were still there, and it was that felt cool because that was new.
Sure.
You know,
There-
normally
there's
that
I'm
doesn't
saying there's-
happen. You're right.
It could
they're
be
normally
either
gone.
way. But sometimes if you can lose that person by ignoring that message, or sometimes
well,
it's multiple
let's talk
messages.
about this in a way that's more practical. Okay, so let's say instead of reading the chat out loud, that saying, so and so came in and said, "Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. Yo, thanks for asking," that kind of thing. what happens if you don't read it out loud and you just say, "I'm good"? Why is that bad? Why is it bad not to read the chat out loud and just respond?
Well, for one, if someone's watching a VOD, that can be a big contextual problem because a lot of people watch VODs full screen and they're not watching the chat replay.
Yeah, that's a reason for sure.
So reading the chat out loud gives the
If
viewer
you have your
full
VODs
context.
turned on.
If you have VODs turned on, yeah, that's one reason.
Um,
The other, well, let's see.
What else? What
Maybe
else happens? What's like a negative impact of never reading people's chat, just responding? I think people can get confused about whether or not they're responding to you.
Well, some people are focused on the actual stream, so they don't. Maybe they missed the question, so they're watching their streamer.
Right.
The person they're watching, they can read out the question and.
It helps
Yeah.
fill in context for new viewers. That's one thing. So you have a brand new viewer pop in, and you're responding to someone. If you don't really give context, I think that's part of this, is that you're almost always creating context for a brand new viewer that just came in. And that's kind of a weird psychological thing to have to be as a streamer, to be thinking, okay, right now I have to fill in the blanks for brand new people.
It's like every
pretty
second to
regularly,
refresh.
you know?
If you're just joining us,
Yeah, and you don't want to say that all the time. So that's an interesting place to be in as a streamer, to have to think. I think that's one of the reasons why, if you're in these good habits of just reading the chat, responding to it, the thing that you read out loud, then you have this opportunity to. Not only do they hear your voice saying their words, but other people know what you're responding to. You know, there's more
Right.
context.
maybe they're watching you full screen and they're not reading chat.
Yeah, maybe chat's not even open. And it really helps me, and that's one of the things. When I watch a stream and people aren't reading chat, I get lost. But I can actually lurk on Jared or your stream, Wuta. When you guys read the chat out loud and then respond to it, it's like I get filled in by not having to also read the chat myself as the background viewer or something, you know?
Yeah, there's
I
another
agree.
benefit,
Aside
yeah.
from the visual quality, there's definitely an audio level that's really well, and you know,
So you could be leaving out part of your audience, potentially, if you don't ever read the chat out loud. Is that maybe a way?
Yeah, or just not giving them context. Well, plus, I mean, let's to the point. I want to touch on what you said a minute ago when you're saying if you just respond to something, they say, "Hey, how are you doing?" You just respond, "Good," right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
one word.
Yeah.
That person, all you said was good. Do they really
Yeah.
know that you read their message?
It's like a
Are they
teenager
sure
that doesn't want
that
to
you-
talk to their parents.
Yeah.
You're like,
Are
I'm
they
fine.
sure that you acknowledge it? No, I'm fine,
I'm fine.
blah, blah, blah.
I'm good.
And, I had a good day. I did this,
I'm
blah, blah, blah. Whatever,
Yeah,
to make little small talk, anything you can do. But if you just say good, yeah, it's like a teenager doesn't want to talk to his mom. I'm fine, mom. Go away.
Right.
I guess some people are just they are at such a level where, I guess in their minds they can just, one word and keep it moving.
Yeah.
They
some
feel
people
too above
yeah,
chat.
but some people can, but it's never. I don't think
Yeah.
there's any detriment to doing it besides the time it takes. Obviously, and whether you can read or speak that quickly. A lot of people can't. Some people don't have that quick speech where they can just rattle it off like an auctioneer. I
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
speak quite quickly than a lot faster than most people, but a lot of people speak a little slower and it takes a while to read the chat. So it's a delicate situation. Just the whole chat thing is tough, man.
Chat's a complex thing, and
It's so
and
complicated.
everything we're talking about right now, could shift in a lot of ways. On Twitch. I mean, our streams are pretty interactive. That's because of chat too. Chat is a weird, powerful tool that's thrown into this live medium and mix. It's very interesting, and that's kind of why I think we're talking in a general sense about like how chat is like a garden in a way. It's like your community, and you want to keep it nice, and you don't want to ignore it, and and you want to be attentive to it properly, individually and in a general sense. And then you also want to be careful with, like we were talking about this earlier. This is probably something we should focus on for a bit. People who will try to dominate. There's a lot of ways that people will use the chat or even any tools on Twitch to try to control or dominate or even be trolly or whatever, that kind of stuff. How do you guys feel about that? And we got Feckless joined us here too.
Yo, Feckless, man, what's going on?
Is he audio? We don't hear anything. Sad
He is
news.
now muted himself.
He is now muted. That's fine.
Scared him. No.
Wait,
There he
hold
is.
on. So I wasn't muted that whole time?
Yeah, we heard your kids.
Oh, for crying out loud.
It's okay. It wasn't that bad.
Well, I tried to hit mute before I joined, and so
Interesting.
I thought it was muted this
Yeah.
whole time. I'm
Oh.
very sorry.
No, you're
It's
all right.
okay.
You're all right.
What's going on, man?
I was just doing dishes and listening, so when I can jump in, which right now my wife's still not home, so I'm waiting. But
That's all
I
good.
just wanted to be
Thanks
able
for
to jump in
joining
the
us.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Very good.
problem. One thing I was thinking about when you, well, you know what, I'm not gonna bring it up because I can't keep talking about it. So you
Oh,
guys
okay. It's fine. So let's talk about the dominators of chat. I guess like there's always going to be people out there that will try and control
two types.
things or you have
Intentional.
types. Oh, I want to hear the types. Let's go. Yeah.
Well, and the intentional ones, and then there's
I see.
just the inevitable ones. You know, people who just are they're naturally flowing with the stream, when no one else is contributing. But yeah, there's people
okay.
that. But
So
there's people that
that's
want to
good. I
talk,
think that's good.
want to chat over maybe.
Yeah, I think it's good to say that somebody could seem like they're dominating the chat, but it's not negative. It's not being done in a negative way. It's just because there's
You know, malicious. Well, yeah. Well,
It's
malicious
not
is kind of a
malicious.
strong
Okay.
word.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's
I
a
get
strong
you.
word, but-
Well, if you have only a few people in your chat, then I mean, if one person's typing a lot, that's not necessarily someone dominating chat. If they're just carrying on a conversation with you, but like the person, it's the person when you have multiple people in there and they just start basically shouting over other people,
sure.
and kind of just flooding out everyone else's messages with their messages. I guess
Sure,
that
like
would
the
be
guy-
the malicious
yeah,
the-
type.
the
that
chat
can be toxic,
person that-
I can-
They come
Yeah,
in
that's
and
that's the more malicious type. That
They're
I
like-
understand now.
sometimes it's not. They don't. Those people might not even understand that that's what they're doing, and they don't. They might not even
Maybe,
understand
yeah.
that they're. You know, there are people that aren't necessarily trying to be malicious. They just are slightly toxic.
Sure.
We've seen that situation in the past where people had. You
so
know,
what do you
toxic
do as a
mods.
streamer? What do you guys advise when somebody comes into your
I've
chat?
got a good rule.
Yeah.
I've got a really good rule, actually.
I was gonna say Jared can really speak to this one. Sorry, I'm
can.
here now. By the way,
Good.
So
Here we
yeah,
go.
I can speak to this one because it does happen often in my chat, and I have found, because above all, like I want to be polite and kind to people, especially like the guy you're just talking about, maybe where he's just naturally like that, but it's a little too much, you know, like this guy just, does he want attention? Does he realize he wants attention? Man, this guy, like he's making this about him, but I don't want to be a jackass to this guy. Like I want to treat him like a human being. I want to
Yeah.
be kind and like I don't want to be one of those guys, you know? And so my rule is I communicate with him like normal, and the second I realize that, oh, this guy's in this category where he wants the stream to be him and me, then I cut it down and I only acknowledge half of what he says.
That's
So-
interesting.
And then
I like that rule.
that still feels like too much, then I go down to a quarter until they stop. And I will tell you, almost every single time they stop, and almost without a doubt, somewhere in there is the message, did you see what I just wrote? Oh, you missed what I just wrote.
Oh yeah, get
And
that all the time too.
And the key for
Yep.
that is I ignore that one.
Yeah.
And
You have to
that
ignore that
is
one.
A polite indicator to those people, unless you actually miss what somebody said and it was important. Like
Sure.
if one of you guys were to say that in my chat, I'd be like, oh, what did I miss? I bet you it's something I want to
No,
read.
you're talking about
but-
this downward spiral
Yeah.
towards that comment where it's like you're waiting for them to use that line.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then that's finally where maybe in another 5 minutes I'll read something they say and I'll keep it vague, and the idea is to keep it polite and kind,
Sure.
so that other people don't realize what you're doing and what's going on.
This is
Like,
probably the right
that's
way
my
to
rule,
handle
is
it.
Cut it in half. Yeah, cut it in half, cut it in half, cut it in half, cut it in half, because it completely removes all potential confrontation.
Right. Right.
So
Bottom line is, you
Well,
gotta
let
cut
me
it.
just say,
So-
for years I've did the opposite. Okay, and and it kind of just reinforces the behavior. Unfortunately, when you try to be like, no, I wasn't ignoring you. I'm not trying to ignore you, bro. I'm just doing my thing. You know, and then it just like reinforces it. Just happens more. So I think
Yeah, it gives them
you're
what
right.
they want.
Yeah, maybe it does. Um,
I was gonna actually ask a question because I'd be interested to hear you guys' response to this. Would you rather have somebody say, "Hey, did you miss what I typed earlier?" or just like paste the message again?
Ooh, that's a good one actually. I can touch on this because it happens to me quite often because sometimes my chat just it goes fast and I miss a message or two. And often people will say, "Hey, you missed my message." And if, if it's a regular to the stream or if it's a brand new person, typically I'll go back and read it. I'm my mouse is right next to me. I can just scroll up and read it, right? Some people don't have it. They have chat on their phone. It's hard to do. I usually generally will go up and read it, but if they just retype the message, sometimes it gets lost in context. So personally, I would prefer that they just say go read it. I'll just go scroll up and read it because then I get the context. If they just paste it again, that moment could have passed. And then they
Yeah.
feel like they didn't get their validation.
I think usually it's a question. I see this
Yeah,
in
that's
Jared's
true.
chat a lot. Like people will ask a question about a lore point or something, and that's a little more. I mean, Jared's chat's a little different, I'd say, than a lot of other chats
It
because
is.
he really encourages people to be part of the discovery for like when he does his lore streams and stuff.
This
And, like,
game has a story?
Yeah. Like he wants them to help him figure out, what's going on. So the input of like the big lore nerds is like important to Jared. So he doesn't want to miss those messages. So I think it depends on the situation, right? So there's certain people that you can almost tell when they're whining that they're being ignored versus when they're just saying, "Hey, I'd really like
yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
really like to hear what you have to say about this thing."
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
And I think
really
an important
it's context based. It's really, yeah.
Yep.
I think an important thing about this whole conversation is as we're talking about this stuff, like every single one of us and anybody listening to the podcast needs to understand you're not good enough at chat yet. I'm not good enough at chat yet.
Oh, we
It's
all
something
are
that
improving.
we
That's
need to be
just
continually growing on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a discussion amongst people trying to improve.
We're all climbing the same wall. So, this is-
Yeah, I will by no means say I'm a chat master.
No. That's a good point.
Like we're not discussing like how we became successful. We're discussing
Twitch
like,
streaming. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
we're discussing
Being
progress.
Things we're learning right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we all are.
the last part of the discussion, I would say, I want to invert the last thing. Instead of chat dangers, how do you guys identify chat positive things, like reinforcing things, like good things for your community? Like what about that? It's good to also be mindful of those people, right?
I like the VIP feature. First off, I think that's a cool feature they added into
That's a good point.
Twitch.
It's so polarizing because I have half the people say that, and then I have half the people that don't use it because they feel like it divides their community. And I don't know. I personally don't think it divides your community at all.
Well,
to me,
It depends on how you divide up the community with
Yes.
it, and that's really kind of important. And
True.
anybody, you can do anything you want with it. I mean, there's no rules here, and so
all it does is give you immune to slow mode, right?
I don't
think
I
that's
don't
pretty
think
much
there's
it.
more. There's a little more maybe. I don't know. But it's a badge. You do get a badge.
Yeah,
in the
that's
chat.
that's the real thing. It's a shiny little badge
I want
next to your
them
name.
to
That's
it's a
what it
badge,
is.
and it I okay. So I mean, we can all talk about how we use them if you want to do that.
It is
I
a
think,
chat function.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, it is a way that we reward positive chatters, I guess. It could
It
be.
is.
I,
Well,
I
I-
redid
I-
mine I redid mine about an hour,
Interesting. So,
and I will tell you how I did it. Is I went, is this person very important to me?
okay, so that's one way. What
So
about you,
Jared takes it very literally.
Yeah,
Very important.
very
people.
important person. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty similar. It's to me, it's I use it more or less as like, so there's a lot of people that come to my stream that don't necessarily subscribe, but they're there all the time, you know.
Sure.
And I know not everyone has money, but it's kind of a way to say like, hey man, I really appreciate you being here, even if you can't be a sub. Here's your
I
immune to slow mode.
recognize that you're here.
I recognize
That's a great
you
way.
and
That
thank
makes
you
them
for
feel-
supporting the channel.
S-
So I
correct,
use it as
yeah.
like for people who support me, that I just want to reward that, you know, their viewership
Yeah.
and their loyalty. You know, it's like a loyalty badge to me.
What about you, Fresh?
I personally haven't, given out a VIP badge, but I like, I've received it, and from the receiving end, it felt justified in a sense. I have, like,
Yeah.
mean,
So
I
I mean,
I did feel valuable.
here's
Not
how I
in
did
like
it.
not to sound like that, but just time and like I wasn't just popping in saying one word and leaving streams, or just
Sure.
You felt like you felt rewarded as a member of the community.
yeah.
Yeah.
And even being a sub, or even being a contributor in other senses, it's just being recognized, and it's yeah. So
It's a
on the
feel
receiving
refreshing.
end,
Feel good thing.
You know what, Freshie? Here, have another one. There you go.
oh boy,
Aww.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cute.
I
So
love
the
that.
way I looked at it was I went into DeepBot, which has been tracking my audience's like hours time spent, and I just went with the top people that have the most time spent in my stream. Period, and that's it.
There you go. Loyalty. Yeah.
I just you get more badges as more people spend time in your chat, so it makes sense that's how I decided that I would just continue
But
to
that
give it to the people that have the most hours.
but that almost like free subscription kind of thing that you do, Wuta, that's a great kind of way to utilize it.
Yeah. It says like
There are
a
people that
different
really
version. Like you don't get the cool emote, but you get most of the rest of the
You get some of the other
features.
features, yeah.
You get the slow mode.
I
you
think
know, and
badge
they
are
can,
pretty cool.
people
Badge
can
is
spam
cool.
emotes.
Yeah.
Honestly,
and
it makes you feel good. No matter how you
Yeah.
use it, the response of the person is the same. And the question is, what do you want to connect to that response from a person? Do you want it to be a time thing? Do you want to acknowledge, or do you want to give those people that feeling, or is it a contribution thing? Is
Yeah,
it
it's up
something
to
that,
you,
like,
really,
like
for
the
sure.
person? But no matter what, the result is the same, because, for instance, like I jokingly give one to Freshie, but it's also not a joke, because Freshie is important. And in my chat, like he sees that he's important to me visually. I don't have to remind him; he's going to feel that.
Yeah, that's true. And
No,
then
I
you can
appreciate.
use this
That's
as
why you are
a
the best.
once you run out of badges, and people show up and they're like, if somebody says, "Oh, I want a VIP badge," they can unlock it. They can help you unlock them.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
need more
So
chat.
so yeah,
Help me help you.
you
It's
could incentivize
a
it, I
simple
guess,
motto.
with tools and things like that.
I added a few last night, and it was just because they had contributed to our event last night, and it's like, hey, you guys put in a ton of work. Boom, here you go.
So
It's like another reward. Again, just a reward function of VIP.
I want to tie a little bow on the whole chat discussion and ask you guys, what do you guys do? Is there anything you guys do? Anything? Just give us one tip each, I guess, that you do to foster active chat, because that's the one thing I think everybody, as they're growing their stream, that's what they want. So give us your.
I got one hot tip that I can that I see a lot of people. It's like a small mistake that even I make sometimes that can really screw you up, is not reading chat from the last point you stopped at. So let's say you're in the middle of like a boss fight, right? You get done with the boss fight. Where do you start with chat? Do you start from the bottom? Do you start from the newest message, or are you going to go up to the last point where you were before you started fighting that boss? Because that's probably what you should do, right? To keep the context going, to keep the chat rolling, you gotta at least, if you don't start where you left off and you go from the bottom up, then chat keeps moving and you're losing context even further, and it'll take you even longer. That's like my one big thing I can say is just try to maintain the flow of where you left off instead of going from the bottom up. I see a lot of people start at the bottom and go up.
All right. Well, let me ask you one for one more tip then. Okay. What if your chat was not very active and you didn't have trouble reading it? What community or what thing would you advise someone to try to encourage more activity in your chat?
I think I think what Sonny's asking is, how do you get people to talk in chat? That's the
Yeah,
golden
well,
question, right? For most
yeah,
new streamers.
That's the
asking
tip I'm
broad-
looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, asking broad questions is a really good way to do that. Explaining what you're doing, and asking broad questions in a broad sense. Like Jared was saying earlier, like not necessarily expecting a response, but like, hey, what should I do here? Why should I do this? Where should I go? What should I do? Etc. Anything. It depends on the context of the game you're playing. But asking
Make sure it's a
questions is a
question
good
you
way.
want answered.
Yeah, but asking questions in general.
Okay. So be
Even if
inquisitive of your audience. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm
That's a
trying to
good-
get it down to a tip. Yeah.
Sorry, that's a
No,
good
that's
word.
fine. Be inquisitive of your audience. Okay.
There you go.
What about you, Jared?
And-
Oh, sorry, Fresh. Did
This
you
is-
have one already?
Oh yeah, you can do
Like,
Freshie. I'm
yeah.
ready.
I was just gonna say, don't be afraid to protect your chat, and show the value of it by handing out timeouts and just policing it appropriately.
Yeah. Okay.
You
So
know-
show you care.
Yeah, and groom it in a sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is that your tip?
Yeah, it's really it. I mean,
Yeah,
just I
okay.
mean, don't be afraid. To
Be mindful of your chat. Okay.
slam the hammer, or even just a simple timeout sends a message, and
Yeah.
it's an easier decision if they continue to break said rule or infringe in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it.
All right, Jerry.
This is gonna sound odd, but I'm way more methodical about Twitch than most people realize. And before I ever started actually streaming, like seriously, I actually practiced chatting and not getting responses. Like I streamed a long time ago, like Darkest Dungeon, a time or two, and like that's kind of one of my mainstays now.
Mhm.
And I remember doing it and realizing like I sat there quiet a lot, and I'm like, who would want to watch that, and who would even chat with that, who would communicate with me? And I was like, nobody. But I understand that like Twitch is about chat, so what I did is not on stream. I played my game. I practiced asking questions. I practiced that one-sided conversation towards chat. I practiced not getting an answer. And I think that it is because of that methodical approach and that practice of communicating to potential silent viewers that when I got viewers, they felt like they could communicate back, and I was ready for it. So practice having hard chat offline or online or whatever. You just need to understand that when you start saying the right things, people aren't just going to talk to you. You're not going to take these things that we've shared or things that you read on Reddit and do them, and all of a sudden chat's going to keep talking. You're going to go and do this stuff, and it's going to be completely the same, and nobody's going to say a damn word to you. And you need to be prepared for that and understand that that's going to be part of the process. So practice not getting communicated with, because then you can elicit those responses. You can elicit the conversational initiation. So practice sucking at chat.
It's good advice. Practice. All right, Feckless, do you have one from your perspective?
So for me, this is, I don't know how relevant this is to, I don't know how relevant this is to anybody, but maybe it's not specific to a slow chat, but it's definite or a totally dead chat. But I think it's specific to certain streamers get in this mode where they have their community and they're like almost kind of like happy with that, and they tend to not interact with chat in such a way that makes it feel inviting for people that are not
Ooh.
inside that community. There's a lot of inside baseball, inside jokes.
I've
go
seen
on
this.
during
The
a
bubble.
stream.
I've seen this. I've experienced
Yeah.
this. This is
Every-
actually
I
a
think
great
everyone
topic. Oh
Yeah,
man.
I think everyone has, and there's a-
That's
there's a way
that's
to
less
do
about
it.
chat though. It's well, it can be about chat, and I think the streamer's responsible to it. And I think
it's
you're
something
right.
the streamer can control
Yeah.
for sure. Well, maybe not control, but you can definitely.
This is
tame
part of the
it,
grooming.
like Freshy was saying.
Yeah,
Yes. So, yeah,
Tend-
there's
gotta
things
tend
that
to
the
the
streamer
garden.
can do. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But I mean, uh, the best, I guess. It's hard to give just like a solid like one-liner tip for how to deal with that situation. Number one,
Sure.
and number two, how to avoid it. More importantly, like how to make it so that it's not an issue in the first place.
Well, maybe
Um,
somebody who's listening to this will have more to say on that topic, and that would be good
Yeah,
for us
yeah.
to hear about.
For sure, yeah.
All right, well,
Please
I'm going to give my
whatever.
tip and wrap a little bow up on this for all of us, okay? And I had a good show. This is a good
Let's do it.
podcast with you guys. So
Yeah.
here's my
Always a good
tip
time.
for fostering active chat. Use the chat in a clever way. Don't just have a place for people to chat. Twitch is incredibly interactive now. You can offer things to your community through the chat that have something to do with chatting, but also does more, like visual effects, sound effects, rewards, jokes. There's all kinds of fun stuff that these tools
Gambling.
offer. Yeah, and I would say be clever. Be clever with chat. That's my tip.
That's very good.
All right.
Very good tip.
Thank you guys for joining me on this episode, and
It's been a pleasure.
we'll see you guys next time.
I actually, sorry.
Wait, I was fading out. Everybody on YouTube's
were
gonna
you
be so
really?
confused. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
We're
sorry.
back.
Nobody cares.
Well,
It's just podcast.
I
Let's go.
I wanted to jump in. I agree with what you're saying with like being creative with chat and using chat commands and stuff like that to make your stream more interesting. But don't get this idea that doing that is some sort of magic bullet that's going to
Oh
make
no,
your
there
stream
is no
awesome.
magic bullet. No.
Well, no, we know that, but
Yeah.
I feel like some people see stuff like that in streamers they like, and they want to. It's almost, I don't know if they actually think this, but it feels like they think if I do this, then I will see increased chat response or whatever.
Sure.
Like, this is gonna work. Like this is gonna be the thing that does it, and that can be frustrating because if you have an expectation of something working in a specific way, and it doesn't work in that.
Sure,
There's my
that's
son.
true too.
If it doesn't work in that specific way, it can be incredibly frustrating.
Sure.
Um,
I guess
so.
it's a good thing would be to say is think outside the box and to do something different.
Yes.
Do more than what you're doing. Don't just leave your chat as chat. It can be more than that.
Yeah.
Don't just let your dreams be me.
All right, beautiful. You guys are awesome. What a good show. We good?
We
You
good?
guys ready for
Let's
next
fade.
time? Yeah, I'm gonna fade out. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
And one more thing.
Oh, yeah. All right, I'm clicking stop.